Hello and welcome, everyone. It's so good to see you here on such a beautiful day outside. My name is Giovanna Scorsone. I'm the Education and Public Engagement Manager here at the Aga Khan Museum. It is my great pleasure to welcome you here today as we have Wafaa Bilal here to talk to us about the evolution of his work and his most recent project, 16801. It's currently on exhibition upstairs. And through this piece, we're invited to participate in changing the lives of students and faculty at the University of Baghdad's College of Fine Arts through the rebuilding of their library. It also challenges us to engage in a deeper conversation about political and personal realities. Before we begin, and in keeping with our museum's mission to use art and culture to promote pluralism and respect for diversity, we acknowledge the territory and living diversity of Canada's First Peoples in this land on which the Aga Khan Museum sits. Toronto, known as Takaronto, is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Today, we make space for us to consider that spirit of respect across cultures as we explore the power of art to connect us to each other and to think differently about who we are personally and politically as global citizens. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Wafaa Bilal. Wafaa is an Iraqi-born artist and associate arts professor at New York University's Tisch School for the Arts. He is known internationally for his online performative and interactive works, provoking dialogue about international politics and internal dynamics. For his 2007 installation, Domestic Tension, Bilal spent a month in Chicago Gallery with a paintball gun that people could shoot at him over the internet. The Chicago Tribune called it one of the sharpest works of political art to be seen in a long time, and named him 2008 Artist of the Year. His work is constantly informed by the experience of fleeing his homeland and existing simultaneously in two worlds, his home in the comfort zone of the US and his consciousness of the conflict zone in Iraq. Using his own body as a medium, he continued to challenge our comfort zone. His most recent body of work, Canto 3, premiered in a solo booth at the New York Armory Show in 2015 and went on to be shown in the 2015 Venice Biennale. In 2008, City Lights published Shoot an Iraqi, Art, Life, and Resistance Under the Gun, about Bilal's life and the Domestic Tension Project. He holds a BFA from the University of New Mexico and an MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. His work can be found in the permanent collections of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Museum of Contemporary Photography in Chicago, and the Arab Museum of Modern Art in Doha, among many others. We're so happy to have him here with us today and to be a part of the story of his piece, 16801. Please join me in welcoming Wafaa Bilal to the podium.
Thank you so much for a wonderful introduction. I wanted to start by deeply thanking the Aga Khan Museum for providing such an important platform in this time of conflict around the globe. I've been talking to the staff, to the visitors, and it really warmed my heart to see such a thing that exists in this place. Also, I wanted to thank Phyllis, the curator of my piece here, for being such a wonderful and generous person to talk to. And I, of course, wanted to thank you for being here and sharing your lunch hour with me. I am going to share a journey with you from the conflict place of Iraq to the comfort zone of United States. It is a journey of an artist, a young artist, to the present time. And it is a journey that's going to take you from agitation to poetic gesture and ending in the participatory art work. Many of you perhaps know I lived under Saddam's regime and his oppression. I'm not going to go into that, but I wanted to start from 1990 when Saddam invaded Kuwait. And as a young artist, college student, I was one of the people who publicly refused the invasion and the occupation of Kuwait. And as a consequence, I had to flee Iraq to Kuwait, and from Kuwait to Saudi Arabia, where I stayed there as a refugee for 2 years in the camp. In 1992, I had the chance to come to United States and start life again. When I was in Baghdad, I was not able to study what I really love from the childhood, which is art. I was sent to study geography and geology. But when I landed in New Mexico, I remember walking on foot for 1.5 miles to meet with the advisor of UNM at the time, Mickey McConnell, and I said, I want to be an artist. And he told my interpreter, just ask him to go and learn some language first and come back. So I did. I learned English, and 2 years later, I was enrolled in art school, and that's how my art journey began in United States. I think at the beginning when I arrived, I was very angry at leaving family behind, leaving home, and then being transformed to a place I'm not familiar with. But also I was very angry knowing that many people in the United States in the comfort zone are not connected to the global issues. So you could imagine as a young person who've seen devastation of bombing of his own country, to refugee camp, to taking the journey all the way to United States, how that young person would feel. And my work reflected my feeling, and I always maintain that as an artist, we are a mirror reflecting the social condition we are in. So I put my anger and disbelief, disappointment in my artwork, and I start agitating, which is very normal for a young artist. And I find that strategy really worked by pushing people buttons intentionally to get them out of their comfort zone, but not for the purpose of agitation alone, or not for the purpose of gaining from that agitation. That continued until 2003, during the invasion of Iraq. And I was one of the people who also opposed the invasion, even though Saddam, it means it will get rid of Saddam eventually. But I thought the war is unjust, and it's not about Saddam, but rather there is a bigger goal behind it. The war continued from 2003 on, but sometimes things happen unplanned that change the course of our life. And that second incident or thing happened beside first leaving Iraq. It was 2004. And it was the news of the death of my brother Haji in our hometown of Kufa. He was struck and killed by a drone plane while he is outside the city. And honestly, at that time, as an artist, as a human being, nothing registered my loss of losing my brother, and later, 2 months later, losing my father as well. But it raises a question, is how is it possible an individual could, with artwork, bring awareness to this conflict, bring awareness to the remote, senseless killing of other people? And that question persists in my mind for another 3 years. And in January of 2007, I was sitting watching a TV, and I come across an interview with an American soldier sitting in Colorado, directing drone planes, dropping bombs on Iraqis with no emotional or psychological connection to the target. And I think immediately I knew what not my next project would be. What it came to be known as domestic tension or shoot an Iraqi, that was my proposal to my gallerist in Chicago. I called her and said, Susan, I wanted to do this project. And she said, explain it. So I told her, I'm gonna move my living space into the gallery. I'm gonna build a website that connects the physical place of the gallery into the virtual place of the internet. And then I'm gonna build control mechanism that would control a robot gun. I built a paintball one. Then I would give control to the rest of the people to shoot an Iraqi through the internet. At the beginning, I stood at target, really not knowing what my role is as a performer. And I think ultimately, I learned very good lesson by being shot so many times with the paintball, and the body took over, trying to avoid the shots and survive. With the sound, with the fish oil that's filled these paintball, it become a miniature conflict zone within the larger comfort zone of United States, where vulnerability become an important aspect of the project for the people or my community in Chicago to sustain me for an entire month. Never left the place, and always people could come, see me, sit behind the gun to have the experience of being shot remotely from somewhere around the world. Eventually, the body took over. And this is what happened to the white room you saw at the beginning. I was shot 70,000 times in 1 month. We generated 80 million hits on the website from 126 countries around the world. But I think the most important thing is the dialogue that took place online, is the chat room I implemented for people to record their thoughts, their ideas, their dialogue. And then probably the worst is feeding the gun that shoots me on a daily basis. Things went really well for about 10 days. And then the Tribune, Chicago Tribune, had the project on the front page. And that brought a massive amount of people trying to shoot and interact with each other. And all of a sudden, the project completely ceased to work. And I thought this is the end of it. And I was very disappointed. But then later on, a very young person walked in and introduced himself as Jason. And he said, I could fix the problem. And I said, who are you? He said, I'm Jason. I work for a tiny company called Wikipedia. And we get a lot of traffic. And I'm the person who is directing that traffic. And I said, okay, you could do it. And he really did. He, within a matter of few hours, managed to get us a professional server outside and increase the amount of people who could interact with each other from 20 to 200. And of course, it was good for them, but it was not good for me. But the other thing, when the gun falls silent, I went into deep depression. And I'm going to play the next video of that day.
Hi everybody, day 10. It was a very emotional day, and we had a lot of problems with the server. It ceased working, the project ceased working at about 1 o'clock this afternoon, and it didn't come up until 7 or 8 p.m. just now. What happened is just the server totally overwhelmed, and the bandwidth was not strong enough to handle all the traffic. So very much the DSL modem, everything we have give up. So now we increased the bandwidth to about 5 times faster, and I'm hoping we could even improve on the server tomorrow when we put the entire server outside somewhere more reliable with larger bandwidth, so it will handle the traffic. Benchain, Sylvia, Jason, Mark, all were here to help today. I was very emotional throughout the day, and I guess part of it, the project is bringing a lot of issues I haven't dealt with. The loss of my father, the loss of my brother, and today it hit me really hard. But now, and also it's another strange feeling. On another hand, when the project ceased to work, I think I got even more depressed because it's very strange when the gun is my company in this space, and when it's silent, I all of a sudden cease to think about my safety, or there is no need to think about my safety since the gun is not going off. So all of a sudden my guards are down, and just so much emotion come to the service. Now the project is up again, and we, instead of the IP address, we have, you could go to flat file galleries, or you could go to crudeoils.us, or you could go to wafaabilal.com. They will all take you to...
And after Jason fixed the project started working. One thing I did with the videos intentionally, I would first streaming online the shooting. It was with no sound, very pixelated images, and that was on purpose. That's how we see war in our zone here. But then on a daily basis, I recorded everything in the project, and then at the end of the day, I would post 10-minute video on YouTube, and this playing with the psychology of my viewers. One is to disconnect them through the grainy videos, and then later to connect them emotionally through the roller coaster I was going through. Everything was start working fine until day 14. In day 14, I start receiving massive amount of shooting, and I have no idea why. Then I talked to Jason, who will become my guardian angel during the project, and I said, Jason, what is happening? Somebody else hacked the project? Because that's what we try and start getting. Hackers would turn the gun into an automatic to shoot me, and the left hackers would turn the gun on the side to prevent other people of shooting me. And Jason this time said, let me check. And he went on and checked, and he said, well, good news and bad news. The good news is the project made it to dig.com, which is the highest rated site on the internet then. And he said, the bad news, prepare yourself for a storm. He was right. I was shot about 20,000 times on that day. And here's that video from it.
Okay, everybody, it's day 14. This has been insane because what happened is it was hit dig.com, and the place has been completely bombarded non-stop for the last 2-3 hours, and you could see it's absolutely the traffic so much. I mean, to the point you cannot, not a single second. I cannot even keep filling the spot here. Dig.com. This is really disturbing. This is non-stop. I cannot keep track of this. I cannot fill these paintball fast enough to keep with the demand. Okay, I'll let you go because I think I cannot do the camera and cannot do display. So I'll just have to run back and forth. See, I have to run back and forth between see, now I'm taking hit. I'm taking hit for them. There you go. See me just it's absolutely non-stop, and this is so disturbing right now. Okay, I gonna go in a safer place. Very disturbing, but I guess I set up the situation. I cannot give up right now, and I won't give up. All right, gonna go and fill it back. See this one. Very disturbing. Very hard. Very disturbing.
That continue, uplifting stories, bad stories, and I think at the end of the project it was day 30th when I become a complete different person. And I think for many reasons, but just to point at two of them. One, my faith was restored in art and in myself, that as an artist, I could do something to bring people together. And I think the second one, I faced my denial in losing family members. It took me a month of psychologically and physically, emotionally breakdown in order to rebuild myself. And here is the video from that day.
Hi everybody, it's day 30th. The gun is very busy right now. I don't have any script written, but I have a lot of people online who are trying to shoot, and as you can know, there is not even a single second between these shots right now. It's very busy right here, and I think, I don't know why the traffic all of a sudden, but it might have to do with the last day of shooting. But I am going to extend this to one more day. So instead of ending it on day 30th, I am going to end it tomorrow, which is 31 days. And this is dedicated, the extra day is dedicated to the people who doubted I will go through this. So to the supporter, thank you very much. You've been great in this journey. It has been very hard journey, ups and downs, united people, divided people, but that's what art supposed to do. It's supposed to inform, it's supposed to agitate, and it's supposed to be part of life. So thanks everybody for your great support. And one more thing, I have no resentment to the people who shot. It's an encounter, it's not a didactic piece, and it's an open narrative one. We could all impose our own narrative on it. So to end this, I am in great spirits. The energy is great. There is of course, there is a mental and physical impact, but that I could deal with that after 5 o'clock tomorrow. I hope to see some of you when I walk out of the gallery. Otherwise, I would love to see everybody on the 16th of June when we take this place down. So either I see you tomorrow or I will see you on the 16th. Thank you again, and it has been a great journey. Bye for now.
When the project ended, I took a pause and I asked myself why that was successful. And I think we have to do that sometime in order to learn from it as an artist and then move on. So I start thinking about it in a critical way, and I come up with very few ideas. I refer them into strategies of engagement. One is the conflict zone and the comfort zone, and I think by now you have that idea of how I am emotionally and physically divided into two places. I exist in the United States as my comfort zone, and in Iraq mentally as a conflict zone where my family live. Then I found out through the practice is the difference, the geographical difference distance between these two places, it does not allow people to engage in the dialogue about war in areas far away. So I started implementing these ideas of aesthetic pleasure versus aesthetic pain, which is simply on the surface of these projects, they are very playful. They are drawing you in to interact, and then later on, the content has been delivered by the pain, aesthetic pain, which is the content of the project. The other important thing I implemented in this one and later on is the link between the physical platform, the museum, the galleries, into the virtual platform where everybody have simple access to it to interact with each other and with the artists. Then I use my body as a mechanism to talk to the viewer's body, because I think the body has its own language and bypass any political rhetoric we imposed on ourselves. All these ideas, I start thinking about them as something called dynamic encounter, which is very simply, I define it as a platform in which all end states are unknown or possible. After shooting Iraqi, I start receiving a lot of invitation to visit communities and engage them in a similar dialogue. I think the first one I answered to it was Montalvo Art Center in Saratoga in California, where I propose, with the help of the community, I will build an Iraqi house, farmhouse, connected by the internet to an Iraqi house where people could, on a daily basis, in the community in California, could live in that house for a few days and chat with the Iraqis. And the community stepped up. All the materials we collected from the ground of the center, and this is based on the experience I went through in the refugee camp in Saudi Arabia when I built my first adobe house. And within 1 month, everybody come together to build that house together. And then we link it to the internet and cable TV. But what the community didn't know, my plan is to blow up the house on the opening night. And that didn't go very well with the director of the center. And my own conversation went like this, like, what kind of democracy that does not let you blow up your house, you know? In Iraq, you could do it and you could blow out a few houses around your house, you know? So I walked away from it because it turned from a dynamic encounter, an interactive project, into really an object set idle on the ground of the center. I moved on to accept another invitation, this time from Rensselaer Biotechnical Institute, under the same topic, which is come visit us, address political, social issues, and engage the community. And at that time, waterboarding was really hot topic. That's a torture method being implemented by the CIA, by the military in the United States against a subject they capture in the Middle East, where they simulate drowning. And I wanted to address that issue as a person who wanted to speak against it. I wanted to inform people, but I didn't want to inform people in a way saying this is not a good idea and here is why. I again wanted to be interactive, provocative. So I proposed a very simple idea, which is let's vote for a month to see who you want to waterboard, the dog or the Iraqi. And one, people didn't know what waterboarding is, so they start knowing about waterboarding. But so many people really got mad at me because they thought I'm gonna waterboard the dog. And Peter rallied on campus to kick me out, and they did. So they shut the project down, but they did not shut the project on the internet. And successfully at the end, we ran the vote, and I lost to the dog, which was always, I would never waterboard a dog. And so as an artist, I wanted to see if waterboarding is simulating a drowning or it's a drowning. And I put myself through that torture method. I completely, after that experience, could speak of and against waterboarding as a torture or method. It's not simulating a drowning. You're tied to a board and you're gagged, and the water drip in your lungs, and you feel you are drowning, and you give up after. I give up after about 6 seconds. Some of the people go through it for hours, and others never come out of life. The other project I did, it's called the Virtual Jihadi. In 2005, I came across this video game which was released by Al-Qaeda and called the Night of Bush Capturing. And the State Department thought of this video game is a recruitment tool, is training terrorists. And I was really fascinated by just like how this organization using video game as a tool, but also I wanted to address the violence and the discrimination in video games that so many young people encounter on a daily basis. I went on to research where that video game came from and how Al-Qaeda was able to do it, probably from a cave in Afghanistan or somewhere. But I came across something surprising. It was really not Al-Qaeda who did the game, the original one. It was an American, Jesse Petrella in California, released a video game called Quest for Saddam. In it, you are the first shooter, and you go through 7 levels. You encounter Iraqis, which all of them have Saddam's face and speak nonsense Arabic. And also there is just like so many, the rhetoric is so disturbing. Even the vending machine is called Camel Cola. So then Al-Qaeda did this act where they went into the assets folder, which is the skin of the player in the game, and they changed it from Saddam to Bush, from the Iraqi soldier to an American soldier, and all of a sudden there was an outrage in the comfort zone about these video games. And I thought to myself, this is really an interesting thing, because the only thing changed about that game, it was the simple act of changing the skin. Then I said, I am going to do something with this game to bring it to the contemporary issues of losing somebody in the suicide bomber. So then I start developing the objective, and I want the game to be a mirror exposing hypocrisy and racism. I wanted to reverse the role of hunter and hunted, address the issue of suicide bomber, and finally involve the people who may not be willing to involve in the dialogue. I went on to insert my own personal narrative from teaching in Chicago to receiving the news of the death of my brother and my father, and then the outrage I went through, and the comfort of seeking revenge by becoming a suicide bomber, which is a scenario you could easily find in the Middle East. But I became a virtual suicide bomber in the game. So I went on to mod the game, which I selected my character after one of the game characters in Assassin's Creed. And then the 3D modeler came up with something very strange, like a medieval warrior wearing a suicide belt, which didn't make any sense. And then I argued with the 3D artist. I said, at least make my face look good. I won that argument, you know, so eventually I look good in the game, and that's what I cared about it. And I hacked the game and inserted myself as the virtual suicide bomber going to assassinate President Bush. It really did not go very well at all. I thought it's a good idea. And then on the opening night, the CIA, the Homeland Security, the FBI, the Secret Service all showed up. And I didn't even have donuts for them or any coffee, seriously. So I thank them, and they verify, all these agencies verify to school, it's not a threat to a sitting president to have the video game. Regardless of that, the student at the school start lobbying the president of the school to shut down the show. And ultimately, the president of the school sent the provost to interrogate me. After half an hour, they allowed me to do my lecture, but then the show was suspended the day after. And then it was permanently closed down because it was for two reasons. One, it's driven from a terrorist organization, and second is a threat to a sitting president. The community did not accept that fact. And the Century for the Independent Media in Troy took the challenge in bringing the game into their own space, and immediately we found different opposition. This time is people, a person, employee with the city in Troy. And here is a quick clip from an interview between both of us.
It started with RPI suspending this exhibit, but it is going to take place today at the Sanctuary for Independent Media. The Rensselaer County Legislature Majority Leader there, Robert Murch, says he's disgusted that they are going to host this exhibition.
There is a serious safety concern, not about just me, but also the sanctuary and the people here. And I wonder if that's a legit concern, if there is any steps we need to take care.
The neighborhood that we're in is the most heavily policed neighborhood in the capital region. I called the Rensselaer County District Attorney and called him at home today and left him a message saying that we're concerned that one person who's simultaneously an employee of the city, county, and state is organizing a protest and is using very inflammatory language.
Mr. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name.
Bilal?
No, A, I have not seen the game. B, I only know about you from what I've read in the paper and I've seen on TV. That can be nothing but terrorism. It's so far, in my view, from art. It's just, it's terrorism. I've been told that all Muslims are liars. And secondly, that all mosques should be closed. You're going down. You and your right are going down. I think we went out of our way not to kill Iraqis. I think they're probably doing more killing of each other at this point.
But I think he's just a terrorist in sheep's clothing.
We tried to get rid of any kind of, plot, all that stuff you saw, we got to it. And, we tried to deal with all that stuff.
Well, the doors haven't been.
I printed this out. This is a quote that we got from Mangione. We're working on it. Unless you think we're not taking it seriously, we're moving on it, as fast as we can.
Yeah.
All right? We'll get on that. That's going to be Well, thanks for coming out.
All right.
Appreciate it. You know, if you,
Thank
if
you.
you see anything that's appreciate it. Let us know. Sooner the better. We can deal with
Thank
it.
you very much. Good
Take
seeing
care.
you. Thank you.
It's good. Nice to see you. Come on over for the show tonight.
I have not heard him saying it's going to be a peaceful protest, and I would appreciate very much for him to say that on the air.
Everybody will be peaceful. Sounds like you have a little fear.
And again, one day later, the city of Troy shut down the show, and they said the reason the doors of the gallery is 29 inches, not 30 inches, and it has nothing to do with the politics of the show. And everybody said, right. But eventually, what the outcome after that, it was heartwarming. The community come out in a protest against the city and force the city not only to open the gallery, but to pay to fix the doors. I addressed the issues of the invisibility of Iraqi death after answering an invitation from Elizabeth Foundation of Elizabeth Foundation in New York of the art. And I proposed a project called Uncounting, in which I wanted to make that issue visible. I studied the map of Iraq, and then I collected the data where every Iraqi has died. And based on that data, I allocated one dot for every single Iraqi according to where they died in Iraq. And then I tattooed the cities of Iraq in a visible ink, permanent one on my back. And then in a 24 hours performance, I allowed people to come and see the tattoo artist allocating one dot for every single Iraqi. This is like 150,000 deaths represented by 150,000 dots. But this time in not regular ink, but rather in an invisible ink. You cannot see it, and unless you are viewing my back under a black light. At the same time, I let people come and read the names of the people we lost, and I thought the simple act of reading the names is acknowledgement of our act. This is what you see on my regular light. This is people coming and reading the names, tattoo artists, and here is a short clip from that day.
Could we turn the lights out for a second?
John?
Yeah.
Hey. Perhaps the most controversial project I've done so far, which I promise a lot of people I would not do it again, is called The Third Eye. It was an answer to a proposal about artists in the Middle East, and the project called Told, Untold, Retold, and it was done in Qatar, in Dubai, in Doha. And in it is we telling our stories, where we come from, where we are, and what's the future of it. And in it, in this project, I wanted to address all of these issues, and also I wanted to address the issues of privacy and the digital connections we have, but also, most important thing, I wanted to raise awareness about how we all Middle Eastern are monitors in the United States. So I proposed to implant a camera in the back of my head and connect it to the internet for an entire year. The camera shot one image every single minute and stream it live to the internet and to the museum in Doha. I wanted the project to be a storytelling, telling where I come from, capture the image objectively, and you know, if you're a photographer, it's impossible to do that, unifying the body with the apparatus to create a new shooting apparatus. I capture about 500,000 images in 1 year. Most of them is very banal, and to be honest, it was the idea of answering the question if we are hiding something. So I literally unfold my private life into be public, to monitor and self-monitoring myself. People behind me, some people did not believe I had a camera in the back of my head, and they're just like, seriously? But other people were happy about it. It was voyeuristic in nature, just like any surveillance camera. But I think at the end of the project, I understand the new generation and how important to be visible. It's kind of an empowerment. I wanted to move quickly to things that's away from these hard performances into something called poetic gesture. One of the first projects is called the Ashes series. From 2003 to 2014, 10 years, I collected images from the war in Iraq, and not knowing why I would want to collect these images. But I start also immediately building these images in miniature skills. Part of it, I think, because physically I could not be in Iraq, and I want that connection with my family and the people there. I would build every single image I receive of destroyed houses, public institutions, library. I would rebuild them in miniature scale, and before I take the shot, I imbue them with 21 grams of human ashes to insert the human aura literally into the artwork. And the result, were very poetic, is it slows us down, and that's what I wanted to do with these images, is to imbue them with this poetic gesture to let us slow down and not be repelled by the war images. Chair, hospital, market, piano, Saddam bedroom. I did not know he had a pink bedroom, which I loved, for a dictator to have that. Chandelier, dark palace, Samarra Mosque, and Al-Mutanabbi Street in Iraq, the book market, and then pool. Another project I did, kind of revisiting the past and make light of very hard era of Saddam Hussein, a project called Canto 3, which was at the Venice Biennale. When Saddam was alive, and this is like the tragedy of having one person dominating the entire country, his party proposed to build a gigantic statue and of gold, and then release it in the space to be geopolitically over Iraq for eternity. And every time you look up, and there's Saddam's reflection in gold above you. And Ba'ath Party did not get a chance to do that project. And I thought, I could do it, I mean, in just like I could honor the past and, minimize the fear we have of that person. But at the same time, I wanted to engage the veterans of Iraq, so I hired them for minimum wage to come and build these statues with me, just not the colossal one, but also just like bust, candle holders, Saddam, bookend Saddam. And then eventually, it's the one that's going to go to the space, and it would look like that, so, and perhaps not put it on, geosynchronize it above Baghdad, maybe Texas, just like, why not? It's a product of that place. But somebody else just like have raised me and put a Tesla in the space. Just like, all right, you owe me one idea. The other project I wanted to present today is called The Think I Could Tell. This project, very poetic in nature as well, and it has a very good connection to the Islamic art and to Islamic scientists. I wanted to address the issue of the post-traumatic stress disorder, which many soldiers, American soldiers, suffer from, and many Iraqi who left the war zone suffer from as well. Through my research, I come across this idea of Ibn Sina, who lived in Iraq many centuries ago, come up with this treatment method, treating illnesses with colors. And I love that idea, and how is it link the past to the present, and how is it able to heal us from the trouble we're facing on a daily basis now. So I built this giant wall, which is threatening people all the time to walk behind it. But once they come through, I offer the space to people to come and imbue themselves with the color of liking. And it was strange enough to know I also hired soldiers to come and experience that. Both the soldiers who fought in Iraq and I am as an Iraqi felt this sense of space when we imbue ourselves in blue. And that project was open to the public. People could simply could come, book the place, and turn any colors they want to. The last project, which is 168 hours and 1 minute. Recently, I used to say 1 second, but somebody corrected me and said that's 1 minute. I said, okay. It was a challenge I was faced in 2010 by Shirmoy Matra, the curator of the AGW in Windsor, where we both had tremendous concern about the loss of heritage in Iraq, and specifically the loss of libraries. I grew up among libraries as a kid. My dad used to take me every day to the school library. As a teenager, I studied in libraries for the lack of space at home. And then through my research, I come across the devastating news of in 2003, that's the College of Fine Art Library in Baghdad was completely burned to the ground, and they lost 70,000 titles. And I thought, this is really a good idea to start with that. But for 6 years, again, I am revisiting what the representation of destruction would be. And then at the very end, probably a month before the opening, I changed the whole idea, and I called Shirmoy and I said, Shirmoy, you're probably gonna hate me now, but I have a new idea. And I said, you could listen to the idea, and if you don't like it, discard it, and then we'll move on with the installation. I said, I want the project to be participatory in its nature. I want it to be rewarding for both the people who participate in it here, and rewarding for the Iraqis. Unfortunately, many artists who take up political social issues, the outcome of these projects never reach the people who are we talking about. So I wanted this project to do something different. I want the project to be tangible on the ground of Iraq. And I said, Shirmai, we're going to start with 1,000 titles, and then we're going to open the exchange to people to replace these empty books with the new books. And I think the next question was, why the empty books? And I said, look, we draw inspiration from our past. And as a kid, grow up in Iraq, we were being told about the invasion of the Mongolian to Baghdad. And in the 13th century, where the golden age of Islam and the Dar al-Hikmah, the house of wisdom, one of the largest library in the world at the time. And when the Mongolians swept Iraq, they wanted to cross the Tigris River. In order for them to cross, they gather every single book in Baghdad and the content of the library to build a bridge, and the bridge of books. And the river bled for 7 days because everything was written in ink, and the books washed away to leave only empty books of knowledge. And that 7 days, it translates to 168 hours. And I wanted to take it from there. We end up with empty books void of knowledge. And I wanted to reverse the clock that minute after and start this dialogue of replacing what we lost, but also restoring Iraqis' faith in humanity and ushering a new era of the construction of Iraq. So the way it works is really simple. You have books, white one, edition, and then over the period of the exhibition, people could donate online, could donate in person, and over the time of the exhibition, these books which lost knowledge, they're replaced. And the white book stays as a reminder in people's home in this zone of their contribution to the new Iraq. I'm very happy to say we delivered so far 1,700 books, but it didn't stop there. I did another Kickstarter campaign to fund the student and the faculty at the College of Fine Art to rebuild a place for it. And I'm really happy to say they have done a great job in building a house for the new arrivals. This is the opening of the library by the Dean. One last thing, which is I am doing on a monthly basis now in New York, it's a stand-up comedy show in New York City. And in it, I wanted to bring a humor and break down politics and empower, establish a platform for a minority stand-up comedian, Muslims, Arabs, and so on. You could find many of these projects in my book, Shoot an Iraqi. And with that, I again would like to thank Phyllis for an amazing platform, and would like Aga Khan Museum as well. Thank you so much.